Hi, welcome back to 2001 Pack.
Today, we're going to take a look at the DS200. This guide also applies to the DS210, which is found in the ET Max. But we're going to go through how to adjust it and make sure that it's properly set up for your riding style and your riding weight.
What will it fit into? Which wheel?
You can now buy the kits with the S-Linkage, so it can fit in a Master, Master Pro, Extreme, T4, ET Max. I think that's it.
So most of Begode.
Most of the newer Begode wheels. So first and foremost, this is a coil shock. Now, some people are confused as to why a coil shock has a valve to fill air. Now, this air valve is purely just to provide pressure onto the oil that's inside the shock for damping purposes. So before we start testing it, we're going to fill it up. So you'll have a shock that comes with your wheel, or it may or may not come with your wheel. The best ones are the ones that have this little valve that you can flip on and off, just so you're not losing too much air when you release it. Now it looks like they have put some pressure into this from the factory. So as long as you're around 100 PSI, you're good to go.
Can you tell us what that clip is for?
Sure, I can tell you.
So I don't know.
Yeah. So there's a thing in that brass thing in there that presses on this. Oops, I have to repump this now. It presses on the spring to let air in and out. And so when you click this over, it pushes it outwards to activate that hole. So as you can see, I'm going to thread it on. And when doing so, you see that on the scale, it shows that it's still 0 PSI. But once I activate this, you'll see that the air pressure will come up. Unless I let it all out already. Looks like I let it all out. So I will pump it up to around 100 PSI. A little bit more for good measure. And I'm going to release this. Here, now I can show it to you. So I'm going to release the air. So you'll see that I flip the switch, and this one will jump to the pressure it was at. So it activates that spring.
Can you close it again?
When you close it, it'll still stay there because the line still has 100 PSI in it. But if I use this button, it will release that air pressure to 0. And so now this line is unpressurized. And if I flick the switch again, it'll pressurize. As you can see, every time I pressurize and unpressurize this line, it's losing 20 PSI every time this line gets filled with air. So that is why I like to pump it up a little bit higher, just for good measure. Now, some people, when they kind of check their pressures, every time they check it, it's losing a little bit. And you might feel like, oh, my shock is leaking air. It's actually not leaking air. It's just that it's getting lost in this line. So just something to keep in mind. So you can flip the switch downwards, which deactivates it. And then you can let the air pressure out of the line so that it's easier to release the screw.
Good to know.
Let's put the cap back on there. Now that that's done, let's take the wheel off the rack and test the preload. Now before we go and test the preload, you'll want to make sure that your suspension is moving freely. If you feel that the suspension is getting stuck or is not coming back up properly, then you'll want to go and check here first to see what's causing that binding from happening so that you can get rid of it and so that it can be moving freely. Now with this wheel right now, it doesn't seem to be coming all the way up. And that is, even though it's smooth, it's not coming up all the way. That is indication that the preload is not enough. So after I installed the spring a while ago, I need to increase that preload to allow it to jump back to its normal position. So let's go and adjust that first. So you'll most likely have one of these black hockey sticks in the package with your wheel if you get a DS200. So you want to do is use this to insert into the holes that are on the preload collar. and just start turning it. This will add preload.
Turn is it clockwise or what?
Sorry?
Turn which way?
If you're looking at it from this direction, you're doing it counterclockwise because it's opposite since the screw is from the other perspective. So in this, if you're doing it from, I don't know how to explain this. From looking down at the shock, if you're going counterclockwise, it's adding preload, and if you're doing clockwise, you're removing preload.
You're adding, right?
I'm adding preload. So now that I've added a couple turns, let's see how this spring does now. So as I'm going to push it down, when I release, it comes back to the top, which means that it's properly tensioned. So when I pull up, there's no extra play that's bringing it up. Now before I step on it, I'm going to pull this, one of the rubber O-rings all the way down as a measurement tool. So when I step on it, I know how much I'm compressing. Okay, now with all of your weight on the wheel, just standing on it, this is what we call measuring the sag. So
stay balanced.
Now what I'm going to do is get my ruler and we can measure this. So from the bottom, the top of this black pillar to the top of this O-ring, you can see it's about 12.5 or 12 centimeters, 120 millimeters. If you measure from the metal to the metal, you can almost get 130 mils. But once you add the rubber grommets and the O-rings, you'll lose about 1 centimeter. So out of 120, it's actually sagging 50%, which is more than you'd want. So the general guideline is anywhere from about 20 to 30% sag for optimal conditions. If you want it to be more comfortable on the street, you'll want to aim for 30% sag, which for this setup would be for the O-ring to be down to here, which is the 40 millimeters sag. If you want the suspension to be stiffer, then you'll probably want 20% sag. So you can play with this. Now with this, if this was my wheel, which it isn't, I would want about 25 to 20% sag because I will use this off-road. In this scenario, you can either switch to the 1,300 pound spring instead of using the 900 pound, which this is, or you can, on the first generation extremes, you can use the hard hole versus the soft hole. Now, once you can get your preload to where you want it, the next step is to check the compression damping and rebound damping. So the blue knob is for compression, which is resisting the downward movement, and red is for rebound, which is resisting the upwards return. So the first thing you want to do is, if you feel that with all these fully turned counterclockwise, which they are right now, when you jump up and down on the wheel, if you feel that the wheel is throwing you off or you're getting shot off like a pogo stick, you can turn this clockwise to add some rebound damping to slow down that upwards movement. Now I'm going to make this to the maximum to show you what the effects are.
So slower.
Okay.
Coming back.
Slower coming back up, correct. So now that we have the rebound maxed out, let me jump on it, and you'll see that it won't be able to come back up. See? You'll see that the suspension is really slowly moving back upwards. Now, of course, this is not ideal for hitting consecutive bumps, because then it doesn't have time to recover back to its set point. So if I release this, my finger strength, you'll see that it quickly comes back up. Now in this scenario, I'm doing it to the extremes just to show you. But what you'll want to do is to fully close it and then turn it a third of a turn every time until you get to the point where you like it. So you'll see with no rebound damping, it'll jump up and down freely. Now, compression damping is the opposite. So if I close down the compression damping, this will resist the movement downwards, which will not let me compress it. Now, this is a good setting to use if you want to use a softer spring for more comfort, but at the same time, you want to prevent bottoming out. So now that it's fully closed, you can see that it won't let me compress the suspension. But if I just turn it a third of a turn, there you go. You can move it a little bit more. And another third of a turn. It moves a bit more until you find the right spot where you don't bottom out, based on the type of terrain or riding you want to do. And that is how you adjust the DS200.
Can you say it again? I don't remember. Turn which way to close it?
So you're going to turn clockwise, which is this direction. You'll actually see also that with the compression knob fully screwed in and the rebound knob fully screwed out, there's also a height difference. So clockwise will screw it inwards, which will increase damping, and going counterclockwise will decrease damping. Let me finish this one.
So going down makes it hard.
Makes it harder. And then this one, I'm going to screw it counterclockwise to reduce compression damping.
Make it softer.
That's correct. But it doesn't really make it softer. It's resisting the movement. There you go. Now this is fully released. So you can see that there's a height difference again. So now, because rebound is fully closed, I'm going to step on it. It's going to compress, but it won't come back.
Oh my goodness, poor wheel.
There you go. You can see it slowly coming back.
And
if I release it, there you go. It shoots back up. You have any questions, Christine?
Do you guys have any questions? If you do, comment below.
Since I sag a lot, do you want to try stepping on it?
Sure.
Okay, I'll smooth this ring down for you and we'll get you to try. So we're going to get Christine to step on it as an example. So she barely compressed it, which means she probably needs a spring that's even lighter than 900 pounds. Okay, now we're going to get her to step off. And then you can grab this ruler, Christine, and measure how much you sagged. So she sagged about 30 millimeters out of 120.
That's what you want.
30 out of 120 is what? 25%.
That's what you want.
But this wasn't you standing on it. This was
with me jumping on it.
With you jumping on it. So it is definitely too stiff for Christine.
Okay, let me try it.
Down.
Both?
So you want to just, you can move both or just one. You want to move the O-ring all the way to the bottom.
Yeah.
And then just step on it. So it looks like it didn't even move.
Just standing. Hold on, maybe I didn't stand properly. How did you stand without moving? Okay.
Oh, it moved a little bit. There you go. Okay, let's see how much it moved. It moved like 1 centimeter out of 12. So 8% sag. So for Christine, if you weigh 100 pounds.
I weigh 100 now.
If you're 100 pounds and you want to ride the Extreme, you'll need a spring softer than 900 pounds.
So changing these will help though, no?
Nope. Changing that will not help because they're both fully released. It is purely based on the preload of the spring that you have in the setup. So that's the wrap of how to adjust your Begode DS200 shock. Now I know that some people have found that they're a little bit pricey, but compared to other alternatives, the damping effectiveness is quite high. So you are able to kind of fully close it out or fully open it up. And that adjustability isn't found in the DNM or Fast Ace shocks that you can buy from AliExpress today. If you have any further questions, or if you prefer reading about it instead of watching a video about it, I will link below a DS200 guide that is in paper form that has all the values and everything set on there. But we'll see.
If you don't want to hear his voice.
Or my heavy breathing. So yeah, that's a wrap. If you have any questions, leave a comment. We're responding to all the comments that are left.
You are.
Yes, I am. Other than that,
like and subscribe. Ding dong ding dong. Bye bye. See
see you
ya.
next time.